Salut à tous, c'est Constant qui vous parle. Je suis très heureux de vous retrouver pour cet épisode spécial sur la chaîne We Are Thunder France. Comme d'habitude, je suis accompagné de Tom. Tom, comment vas-tu?
Eh ben, ça va très bien. Comme tu l'as dit, Constance, ça a été un épisode assez spécial avec un invité aujourd'hui.
Oui, avec un invité, vous allez voir que c'est un invité très spécial puisqu'il s'agit de Clemente Almanza, un des insiders du Thunder aux États-Unis. Et petit dernier truc aussi, je préfère le dire au préalable, ne jugez pas sur les accents. Je sais que mon accent anglais est déplorable. J'ai pas attendu que quelqu'un vienne me le dire dans les commentaires pour m'en rendre compte. Oui, il y aura des fautes, mais voilà, on tente de faire ce qu'on peut. Et n'oubliez pas que l'anglais n'est pas notre langue native, donc un petit peu de tolérance et un petit peu de respect dans les commentaires, même si je sais que la très grande majorité des gens seront respectueux, mais voilà, c'est un petit préambule. So, we will now switch to English to welcome our guest. He's the managing editor of the Thunder Wire, co-host of the Breakdown podcast, also known for being the person who tweeted the image of Paul George trade the most times in the world. It's Clemente Almanza. Clemente, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Just, about to wrap up this season-long 6-game homestand, but I mean, really, it's been a really fun time covering this team so far.
Yeah, the small ball team, the new era of the Thunder, something that even Mike D'Antoni has never done before with a 6'5" center. But in any case, we're very happy to receive you in this podcast because we appreciate your work at We Are Thunder France. Your arrival has brought something new that not necessarily all insiders who cover the Thunder have. And yeah, we're very glad to have you on this podcast.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I mean, like you said, it's definitely a privilege to do what I do, and I definitely don't try not to take advantage of that every day.
Yeah. So this podcast will be in two parts. Like I said, the first part will be about covering the Thunder because we have you, Clemente. So we were asking questions that are related to covering the Thunder in Oklahoma because, of course, us French people, we don't have the privilege to be able to cover the Thunder in Oklahoma. So we will talk about that a little bit. And the second part will be about basketball stuff. So the start of the season for the Thunder and, of course, the Chet injury and how the Thunder has been able to manage this Thunder injury by doing a basketball that is extremely fun, I would say. Is a bit unorthodox, but very fun to watch. And for now, it's been a lot of wins. So it's been three wins and 0 loss since the Chet injury. We are recording before the Mavs game. So yeah, for sure, for now, it's fun basketball.
No, yeah, for sure. They've done a really good job of just kind of, surviving with the J-Dub at center minutes. And, they've gotten a little bit lucky with the schedule with some of the teams they played against. I mean, the Pelicans, I don't even think they had like 5 NBA players in their starters when they played. And then, obviously the Suns were about KD and Bradley Beal. And now the Mavs game, like you mentioned, like Luka's going to be out, all of them at home as well. Like if, obviously you never want Chet to go down like that, but if there was ever a time to like kind of make that type of like huge adjustment, like this is probably like, the softest schedule they could possibly get to make it.
Yeah, I agree. The Pelicans, they have so few NBA players that they were playing Jeremiah Robinson Earl. I don't want to be mad at him. I don't want to talk trash to him, but yeah, when you see he's in the rotation from a team that wants to be a playoff team, you're saying, yeah, there's a lot of injury.
And they're very dependent of Brandon Ingram, who seems to leave the team, but he's now the franchise player with the injury of Zion. So it's quite funny to see that.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, you've seen kind of Lou Dort kind of have his number, especially dating back to the playoffs last year, and it kind of happened again in this regular season matchup where BI had the strong start, but kind of like faded into the background.
Yeah. But Lou Dort seems to have the number of many people during the start of the NBA season. We've seen it with Booker in the previous game against the Suns. What he's doing on the defensive end to start the season is amazing, absolutely amazing. But we will talk a little bit later about the Thunder defense. So my first question for you, Clemente, a little bit basic, but can you introduce yourself for those who don't know you and explain us a little bit what is your connection with this Thunder team?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned earlier, I'm the managing editor of Underwire. It's a USA Today sports media group site. Um, and I've been with them since the 2020-21 season, and I've been covering the Thunder on a daily basis with them over there for I think like 4 seasons now. Um, and you know, obviously, when I first started, COVID was still a thing, so like a lot of my first couple of years were kind of on Zoom and remotely. But over the last 3 years, I've been able to kind of cover the team in person. I've gone to like all their home games, some of the road games, covered every game last year in the playoffs as well. So I just been kind of doing that. I kind of write about them every day, just talk about them as well. Um, but I mean, yeah, man, like I said, I try to go to as many practices as well as possible and just kind of build a relationship with these guys. And, I think I've done a pretty good job of that over the years. And it's been pretty cool to kind of see this team kind of rise to being the team that they were, because, I mean, 2 years ago, they weren't even, I mean, they were getting the play-in tournament and, the play-in tournament. And now, like 2 years later, now they're like one of the best teams in the league. So it's been a quick rise for sure. And just to kind of see Shea kind of, blossom into one of the best players in the league has been super cool to kind of follow and cover.
Yeah, yeah. You're saying that you've been covering the Thunder since 2020-21 season, and we were recording a podcast with Brendan Raba, who is another Thunder insider, and he was talking to us about how weird it was to cover the Thunder at this time, or to cover simply the NBA, because like you said, there were Zoom stuff, there were no press conference in person, and that must have been kind of weird to you that your first season covering the Thunder team was a season with no audience in the Chesapeake Energy Arena or the Paycom Center, and not to be able to communicate directly with the players, but to be able to do press conference and to ask questions only on Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, just being honest, I didn't even go to any of the games during those first couple of years of COVID, just because there's really no point in going, especially the first year without fans, and just because of the fact that all the press conferences were virtual and online. There's really no point in me going to an empty arena, basically. So I did those first couple of games remotely, and I covered the games from my house, and it was, I mean, it had its benefits, just being able to conveniently cover a team from home and not having to travel and go to the arena and all that stuff. But I'm in my third year now covering the team in the more traditional sense, where it's back in person and all that. And I definitely prefer this method over, doing it over Zoom and just watching the games on TV.
Yeah. I can agree with that. So you're local. You're from Oklahoma, from base. Were you born in Oklahoma? Or in other state of the US?
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised in Tulsa, which is about an hour and a half away from OKC. I think those are like the two biggest cities in Oklahoma, or Tulsa and Oklahoma City. But yeah, I mean, I was raised in Tulsa. I went to OU, which is like the biggest, university here. And, they got like one of the best journalism programs as well. So, I spent time there, graduated in 2022 with a bachelor's degree in journalism. And, I've just been kind of with Underwire since then. So, I've been basically here my entire life, and just kind of covering the team as a local has been super cool as well.
Yeah. OU fan, I would say.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a big Trae Young guy, man. I feel like Trae Young gets too much criticism, and so I've been his biggest fan, kind of defending him over the years.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the basketball in OU is not the biggest program in America, I would say, but they have a big football program in OU, even though I'm not following the college football season, but what I can read about it, it's not the best season for OU.
No, this is, I mean, OU football, yeah, OU football is king here. College football is king here. Like, that's always going to be like the top sport in Oklahoma, just because, it's been here since basically the beginning of the state's history. And the Thunder is still relatively new. Like, I don't even think they're like 20 years into being in Oklahoma City. But, I mean, like you said, like, I mean, OU's definitely had a really bad year. I think it's like their worst season since I've been alive. So, they've been bad, but I mean, it benefits me and it benefits everybody who covers the team, because now you got like more eyeballs on the Thunder in the early part of the season, where normally you don't like get the entire state's attention until like spring and the playoffs roll around.
Yeah, they're saying, "Oh, OU is bad. Let's switch to the Thunder directly."
Yeah,
we will see good sports being played.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, like I mean, you know, to the fans' credit, I think the home crowds have been pretty good for the most part this year, and a lot better than last year. I really think, you know, it probably took the average person to kind of a little bit of time to kind of realize just how good this team is compared to, like, you know, the average fan. But I think for the most part, the home crowd's been pretty good this year.
Yeah, but I have a question about the home crowd. It was not my question, my next question, but since we're talking about it, I will ask it. I wanted to talk about the atmosphere at the Paycom Center, because whether it's Tom or me, we've never been to OKC yet, but you can see that there is a very special atmosphere. We've seen last year during the playoff run with all the people wearing the t-shirt, which is a thing that you do not see in every stadium, in every city. And that shows that I think it was in a recent poll, OKC was considered the second most difficult place to play behind Denver. So can you describe us a little bit what makes this city and the Paycom Center so special? Because like you said, they've been tanking or rebuilding seasons, and since the last 2 or 3 years, we can see that there is a new energy that's coming from this area. We can see it with the people who are barking to imitate what J-Dub is doing. So can you talk a little bit about this atmosphere in the Paycom Center?
Yeah, I mean, you really started to see like a pivot of the fans, like right around after All-Star break last year, where the games were like the atmosphere was a lot better, and you can kind of tell that most of the, I guess, local sports fans started to realize just how good this team is after the All-Star break. So you could really like sense a pivot between before then and after that, and then in the playoffs. Like last year was the first time I've covered a playoff series with the Thunder, and I mean those home crowds, especially in the Pelican series, the first couple of games, like
Yeah.
it was a full on party, like an hour before tip off. Like people were like the stadium was already packed out. They were blasting music, and you know, and the funny thing is like they have this new jumbotron last year, which is a lot larger than what it was, and for like an hour before tip off, they will like, you know, try to tease fans who wouldn't wear the playoff shirt into wearing it by showing it on there, and you know, the entire crowd would boo them until they eventually put them on, and they would eventually cheer them on for doing that. But I mean, it was electric, man. Like I said, it felt like a concert a little bit pregame, where everybody was just super into it. Everybody was using their clappers that were at each other's seats, and like I just felt I've never experienced anything like that, and I mean, I was just feeling goosebumps the entire time throughout pregame and really throughout the entire game as well. But I mean, yeah, and you know, I also traveled with the team as well. And New Orleans, I mean, the New Orleans series, like at New Orleans, like it wasn't really the best crowds, if I'm being honest. Like
Yeah.
you could kind of tell that, you know, New Orleans really isn't a basketball city.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at points like there were more Thunder fans than Pelicans fans
Yeah.
in those two games. And then Dallas had a pretty good crowd as well. But ultimately, I think OKC was like in its own tier from what I've experienced, and that's also like what a lot of other people who covered the team a lot longer than me have also said.
Yeah, reminds a little bit about the Russ, KD, and Harden era. I mean, the when you look at the first playoff series in 2010 in OKC history against the Lakers, the atmosphere in the Ford Center, I think it was named the Ford Center at this time, was just electric. And I think that when you look at the first game against the Pelicans, it's been like 4 or 5 years since Oklahoma City I've seen a playoff game played into the Paycom Center, because of course there's the Chris Paul season, but it was in the bubble in Orlando. It was totally different, and you could feel that people were waiting for this, and they were just waiting for this to happen, to be electric like it was 10 years prior.
No, yeah, and I remember Sam Presti vividly said, like at the beginning of this rebuild, that the day that, you know, there's a playoff game in OKC is going to be a super special day, and like he just went on describing just how excited he was about that event. And you know, now that I had like a first-hand experience of it, like I mean, it definitely lives up to the hype and then some, of just how electric this crowd can get during the playoffs, and just kind of the, you know, home court advantage that they create as well. And you know, last year was also the first time like this group saw, you know, an OKC playoff crowd, and all of them raved about it, saying like how awesome it was and how special it was to kind of have everybody, you know, having that type of support, and you know how it kind of creates an advantage on the court a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it was super cool for sure.
Yeah.
And did you see because of you talk about a pivot after the previous All-Star break last year, and with the playoffs, with 2 series of playoffs, did you see at the beginning of this regular season a difference in the hype in Oklahoma? Did you see a difference between this beginning of regular season than the regular season of 2023, for example?
Oh yeah, definitely for sure. It's just kind of like it kind of takes a while for like the average person to kind of figure out just how good an NBA team is, and the Thunder, we're rebuilding for a 3-year stretch, and that kind of tuned out a lot of the casual fans. But now that they've had like one deep playoff run in, have had an entire offseason to kind of catch up, you can definitely see that some of the conventional wisdom has caught up with just how good this team is. And I mean, there's been some games throughout this year where it definitely kind of feels like a playoff game. I mean, the Warriors game where obviously Chet went down, but OKC kind of started making a run there at the fourth quarter. Like that was a really great crowd as well. But yeah, I mean, like I said, like there's definitely been an increase in like crowd activity this year, and I think that's up to par with just how the average rebuild goes, where an NBA fan base might take a little bit longer to kind of catch up to just how good the team is, and I think the Thunder fans have like caught up to just how special this group can be.
Yeah, I think that you were talking about the pivot from last year's post All-Star break. I think that the first game post All-Star break last year was against the Clippers. It was a big game between 2 top heavy teams in the Western Conference, and to be able to beat the Clippers, and we know all the narratives about the Clippers, the Paul George trade, and I think that shows that the team will, the people in OKC were like, okay, this team is good, and you have a 10-day break. First game after the break, and you say you're beating the Clippers, I think, by 15 or 16 points, and the people are saying, okay, this team is really good, and this team is capable of doing great stuff during the season.
No, yeah, for sure. And like last season, like after not making the playoffs the year before and kind of losing the play-in tournament, I think last season's goals were kind of like, all right, can the team just get in the playoffs?
Yeah.
And I mean, they made that goal for sure easily, and it kind of took a while to just kind of realize just how good this team was, because you kind of wanted to see it play out even more. And, obviously, I think they had like that 3-3 start to the year, or like they were around 500 to start the season, and then they just caught fire. And I just remember thinking like I was just waiting for like the other shoe to drop eventually, but it just kept winning games, and then like I said, like around the All-Star break, that's when you kind of thought like, all right, this seems like a legit like title contender. Like despite having the youngest roster in the league, despite not making the playoffs with this group before, like it's pretty obvious that they made the jump already. And like I said, like after the All-Star break, where the college football season's already over with, nothing else is really going on around the state, like that's when most of the fan base really started to tune in and see just how good this team was last year.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the outfield aspect that we do not see from France. How is it to cover the news on site with the player and the coach available? I think that you obviously you have a major advantage to be able to talk directly to the coach and to the players, but what's like to be able to cover this team, this other team on site, and to be able, like I said, to express and ask questions directly to Mark Daynote or to players during after shoot around or press conference?
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a privilege, like you said, because not everybody gets a chance to cover the team in person on a consistent basis. So I definitely don't take that for granted. But it's really good. And the thing about this team is that they're all really good at like answering questions. Like you don't really have anybody who kind of, I guess, shortchanges you whenever you ask a question or whatever. And Mark's really good at giving you answers. Like anytime you ask him anything, he'll give you a full-on response that you could really use in a story, or whatever else that you might use it for. And Shay's really good, Chet's really good, J-Dub's really good. Like all these guys are really good at just talking to the media and kind of understanding that side of the business, and kind of understanding like what we do. And you really don't see that, like, and that's something that you don't really see across the league, especially when you see some of these other quotes from some of these other teams and guys. But like I said, they're all really good guys, and they're all really easy to talk to, and they really give you a really good answer, and they really try their hardest to try to answer your questions.
They are really open to medias to talk about basketball, and that's cool to talk with them on near the court after the trainings, etc.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you don't really see that a lot. Like I've been in a couple of I guess Greg Popovich pregame pressers, and there's definitely like a lot of tense moments in there where he's only giving you like 5-word answers to your questions, and he doesn't really, he's not 100% giving you the greatest answer or whatever. But that's something that the Thunder are really good with, is just all these guys give you really good answers, and they try their best to kind of inform you of your with the questions you ask, and that's something I really don't take for granted, because like I said, there are other situations around the league where this is not the norm for them.
Yeah, I think maybe it's because OKC is a much smaller city than cities like Los Angeles or New York, when you have much more journalists, much more media covering the team. And I think that, I mean, it's only my opinion, but to have much smaller town, much human contact, I would say, with the players, it gives you a sense that the coach and the players knows you, so they will be more engaged to really answer the question than if you're, I would say, the 37 journalists covering the Knicks or the 58 journalists covering the Lakers. So I think that the fact that OKC is a small market, even though I don't like that word, it brings a much more humanity and in the relationship with the players. And yeah, I think that they're more engaged and they're more willing to be to really answer the question.
No, I can speak from personal experience too, but this team does a really good job of just kind of trying to like build a relationship with you, and just trying to get to know you both as a reporter and as a person. And you really notice that effort, and it just does a really good job of just kind of creating, like you said, a culture where a lot of us can get really good answers out of the guys more times than not. And like you said, like this beat is a lot smaller than, I'm assuming, like the average NBA team, especially in the West Coast and East Coast, and that really gives you an advantage to kind of create I guess one-on-one relationships with a lot of these guys. And yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, like this team for really mostly does a really good job of just kind of being as media friendly as possible.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask this question, because you said that they were all great to answer question, but which is the player you are most happy to have in a press conference or interview during the shoot around? Maybe it could be the funniest, or the one that would give you the best answer. Which is the one that you're seeing that it's him who will be talking to the press, and you're saying, yeah, that will be good stuff?
If it comes to like actual basketball knowledge and getting really good answers, it's definitely Mark. Mark does a really good job at just giving you as much information as you can whenever you ask about anything. But like in terms of like, I guess, funny quotes or tweets that you're hoping to like kind of go off on Twitter, I mean, it's definitely I mean, J-Dub's really good with one-liners. Chet's,
yeah,
I think Chet's kind of funny for sure. I don't think he's
underrated
enough for how funny. Yeah. Chet's really underrated with his comedy. But like I said, most of these guys, I mean, all these guys are really good to talk to for sure. But those are kind of the guys that kind of like stand out to me.
Yeah, or maybe you have a player like Aaron Wiggins who's doing the interview, and you heard J-Dub screaming at the back on the video.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, they're all great. And you talk about how Mark Daigneault is very good at answering basketball questions. I love that a question that was asked to him recently about the free throw disparity for the Thunder compared to other teams, and I really like the answers. And when you heard the Mark Daigneault answers, you're like, yeah, he's really thinking about it. He's not doing a PR. He's not he's not playing. He's really thinking about the answer, and he's giving his opinion raw. And it's something that you can appreciate, because, like you said, there's coaches that their coaches are not always like that. You talked about Greg Popovich, but there's coaches like, I would say, maybe Ty Lue is not very a big fan of the media. Doc Rivers has a very good PR, I would say. But yeah, I mean, it's very cool to see that even this team is very friendly on the court, but in other basketball stuff that's not always on court stuff, they are also very friendly and down to earth, I would say.
No, yeah, and like you mentioned, like, you know, I think what helps with the Thunder whenever they do, you know, kind of talk about the, like your example, the officiating, is that they don't really do it a ton, and like there are plenty of other examples around the league where it's just nonstop complaining to the officials, and when you do that so often, you kind of lose a little bit of credibility. And Mark does it. Mark, you know, Mark rarely does bring it up. I could probably count on one hand the amount of times he's brought up the officials publicly, and so for whenever he does do it, it kind of adds some legitimacy to it, because, you know, he's not the type to, like, you know, complain just for the sake of complaining. And I wouldn't even say that he complained about the officials the other night. It's just that, you know, there's definitely the math doesn't really make a whole ton of sense when you compare, you know, the drives to the basket compared to the free throw numbers that they get. And he did a really good job of just kind of articulating that, and, you know, bringing up statistics that really backed up his points. So, you know, even, you know, so whenever the team does kind of do something like that, it definitely adds some legitimacy to it, just because of the fact that they don't really do it a ton, and when they do it, they like back it up with data.
Yeah. So I will talk about a little bit about Sam Presti, because he's a very discreet person, I would say, who gives very few interviews except at the beginning and the end of the season. But why is it easy outside of far away from the microphone, someone who is accessible, present at the game? We see him sometimes near the stands at Paycom Center, but we'll not see him at every game. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about Sam Presti, because you see him much more than we see him. So what he's like outside of the microphone?
Yeah, I mean, you see Sam at every Sam's at every game, from what I can tell, or at least most games, and he does a really good job just being present around the team. And, you know, Sam's, you know, he seems to be very calculated and, you know, easygoing guy, and he's really helped form this culture with the team where, you know, you can kind of, you know, be very you can form like relationships with some of these guys as well. But yeah, I mean, you know, Sam might not be available during the season the whole time, but like he more than makes up for it in his end of season presser and preseason presser, and, you know, even his draft pressers, where he's willing to talk as long as the media asks questions. And we've kind of see that kind of form into these 2.5-hour press conferences that really doesn't happen anywhere else around the league. Like, I've talked to other people who cover, you know, other teams, and they're surprised at the fact just how long Sam kind of sits down and like talks to media whenever he does talk to them. So, you know, he does a really good job just kind of answering, you know, everybody's questions, and, you know, he does a good job of just kind of like having like 1,000-yard zoom out in terms of like answering like the philosophical viewpoint of the franchise, and, you know, where this franchise is heading and all that. But I mean, like I said, like Sam Presti, you know, when he does talk, like it's basically must listen press conferences for sure.
Yeah, very good at quotes and one-liner. Is maybe the best on this certain team and this other organization. They are some Presti quotes that they are a part of history now, I would say. Like when we want to be in postseason, it will not be an appearance, it will be an arrival, who was tweeted a lot during last year's playoffs. So he has always good quotes, I would say.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I said, he's like another guy that does really good with the one-liners, like you mentioned. But yeah, Sam's cool for sure.
Yeah. So I will talk a little bit about this group, the Sun squad. From France, we have this impression of having a very tight group, a group that lives very well, without any ego, as attested by the post-games interview with Nick Gallo. Even it's a bad thing, according to Drummond, who used to eat his teammates. So I'm not sure it's a good thing to hear what Drummond has to say about the good vibes in a team. But is it also something that you feel on the spot, this very tight group, and they do not have a single egoistic person?
No, yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows what their role is for the most part. Like, you don't have anybody trying to aspire to be more than what they are. And I think that's like what Draymond, I guess, kind of missed. His whole point is that he talked about how, you know, he wants Shea to kind of be the face of the franchise, and he wants him to like talk more to the media and all that, but just to kind of insert himself as like one of the league's faces. But I think he already does a good job of that. I think everybody kind of understands, like, you know, Shea's the top, you know, the best player, obviously, and, know, Jada and Chan understand that, they're kind of like his rising stars as well. And, everybody else on the team kind of understands what the role is, and you know, I think that's helped form a kind of a really healthy, I guess, culture and environment for this team. And you know, the Thunder are very transparent with their players as well in terms of like what they're looking out of them and what they're hoping to kind of see from them and what type of role they can see them in. And I think that transparency has really helped them in a positive way in terms of just kind of, I guess, creating, you know, like I said, a culture where everybody kind of understands, you know, what the role is going to be and how they can best maximize it. So, I mean, like I said, like this group has been very, I guess, close knit, and you know, they just do a good job of just kind of, you know, staying together. And it definitely also helps that they're all also kind of in the same age range as well, so they got a lot of ways to kind of relate to each other. But I mean, yeah, like the chemistry is through the roof with these guys.
Yeah, the old guys are like Caruso, who's 30, and Kenrich, who's like 29. So you can see that this is the youngest team in the association this year, because the Spurs have made the trade for Harrison Barnes and the signing of Chris Paul. So you know, this the youngest group, and I think that the fact that most of them were drafted by the Thunder, or they only knew the Thunder as their NBA team, and I think that's also a part of the tightness of this group and how friends they are between each other, because they've been, like you said, they've been in the association for the same amount of time and for only one team. So you know, I think that it was a scene that we have seen during the rebuilding season with Darius Baisley and Shea, and even though the Thunder are a contender, it's still there, and it's good to see that you have a very good culture, like you said, around this team.
No, yeah, and like I said, like it definitely starts at the top of Shea. Like out of all, like Shea could easily be one of these superstars who, you know, commands the franchise and, you know, forces, you know, the team to, you know, do whatever, you know, they want for him. But he just does a good job of just kind of relating to everybody on the roster. And, you know, you kind of see that with some of the guys at the end of the bench as well. Talk about how, you know, Shea does a good job of just kind of establishing a relationship with them. And like I said, like out of all the superstars in the league, I think Shea probably has like the lowest ego out of all of them for sure, because it does feel like he's all about, you know, helping his team win as much as he can. And you kind of see that with his stats as well, because, you know, there's been plenty of times where he probably could have had like, you know, 50 points or whatever, but instead, you know, he kind of just checks out, and after the Thunder kind of have locked the win. But like I said, Shea really does a good job of just kind of, you know, honing that culture, and you definitely see the benefits of that these past couple of years. And I'm assuming, you know, this is like the first couple of years of a long, you know, window for them being a title contender, and you know, Shea being, you know, as I guess easy to get along with as he is has definitely helped with that.
Yeah,
Shea is often compared, often not as some comparisons with Michael Jordan, but the manner to be a leader is seems to be not the same between Michael Jordan, who was impressive in trainings, but it was not on the same type of chemistry to make with his teammates than Shea. Shea is probably acting like more like Nikola Jokic, some players like that who make the team first, the team first before their individual stuff. And do you think this chemistry on the team is a good manner to integrate some players like Nikola Topic, for example, who's not playing? But do you see how Nikola Topic is integrated to the team? He is not playing, but is he on the same vibe like Chet before, who's not playing on the first year, but he was on the team vibe, and when he was on the court, he was matching the team mostly immediately.
No, yeah, I mean, Topic just kind of, you know, has rehabbed in the background this year, but I mean, like I said, like he does a really good, like the Thunder done a really good job of just kind of, you know, welcoming him, and you know, and like Shea, like you mentioned with Shea, like Shea does a really good job of just kind of, you know, like I said earlier, relating to his teammates. Like he spent notable time this year, kind of, you know, helping Dylan Jones and AJ Mitchell out, and those two guys are like a two-way guy, and you know, a late first-round guy, and you know, a lot of cases you don't really see a superstar, you know, kind of interact as much as Shea has with those two guys, and kind of like, you know, answering the questions and all that. And I'm assuming, you know, Topic is also undergoing a similar experience this year where, he's kind of like learning as the game kind of goes, as the season kind of goes, even though he's not playing. And I mean, I'm super excited to see how Topic is next year. Like, it kind of feels like, he's going to fill in the backup point guard role that they've kind of been wanting to see. And they kind of get I guess, a do-over with the Josh Giddey archetype. Because obviously, Giddey, they ended up trading him after he said he didn't want to come off the bench this upcoming year. And now Topic, you get to kind of restart the type of archetype. And I mean, we'll see how he is next year. And like, that's like another, I mean, that's just an embarrassment of riches at that point. You got this other guy waiting in the wings who was going to be a top 5 pick this year, kind of developing the background this year. And I mean, he could definitely change like the entire dynamic of this team in its window. But yeah, I mean, we'll just have to move Topic for sure. Like, he's been doing a good job, but he's been with the team for the most part this year.
Yeah, I lost a little bit of my data. I lost you for a second, but that's okay. It was my fault. So since you're talking about the new guys, we'll move on to the basketball stuff. First of all, the moves of the offseason with the Isaiah Hartenstein signing and the trade for Caruso against Giddey. It seems that this is the year where the Thunder really seems to assume its status of contender and made choices to go in this direction. What is your feeling on this aspect and the move that was made by Sam Presti during the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bittersweet just because we haven't seen them together yet. And, we're already like halfway through November. So like a lot of this is like still kind of like projecting out. But I mean, when they were healthy in the preseason, I mean, they were just running guys out the gym. And I'm assuming, once Hartenstein comes back, I mean, we kind of saw him warm up last game, and he looks pretty close to returning. No longer has the hand brace. Now he's wearing KT tape instead. But I'm assuming like once Hartenstein comes back, he'll be able to kind of, be the starting center and kind of stabilize that spot. We'll chat out for the foreseeable future. So, and, from what he did, from what we saw in the preseason, it looked like he was like a perfect fit for this team. And, he did a really good job of just kind of running the second units with J-Dub as an offensive hub. And, he should help out with the rebounds as well. Like, I think OKC is like the worst rebounding team again this year, funny enough.
Yeah.
But Hartenstein should help with that. And, he's a big body as well. And, last year he already has a little bit of experience kind of, being in these circumstances where a team starting center is out for a really long time. Because obviously, Mitchell Robinson missed most of last year with the Knicks. So I feel like once he comes back, which I think is probably going to be sooner rather than later, once he comes back, I feel like he's going to, really stabilize some of the things. Like I mentioned, like the small ball stuff has been fun for sure. J-Dubs look really good, but I just don't know, like, how sustainable that is for multiple months. And, once Hartenstein comes back, you can slide J-Dub back to his natural spot, the 3 and 4, and, just kind of, get back to, something that's more sustainable, Hartenstein. And with Caruso, I mean, Caruso's looked really good this year. I know his box score stats haven't really looked great, but, I mean, if you just look at his on-off numbers, like, they're through the roof. And he's another guy where, he just does a really good job of just kind of knowing what his role is and kind of maximizing it. And, we've kind of seen him play some backup 5 minutes this year out of necessity, and he's looked really good as well. And eventually, I feel like the 3-point shot's going to turn around here pretty soon. And we've already kind of seen that a little bit over these last couple of games that he's played in, where he's starting to make some 3-pointers. And I mean, we'll see where he's at. I mean, I think he's about to miss his third game now with a hip strain. And but he was at practice yesterday. He kind of moved around really well. I don't think that's going to be like a long-term injury. I think he'll be back here pretty soon. But I mean, those two guys, I mean, it kind of sucks that we haven't really seen this team fully healthy yet. And it's going to be a while until we do. But, just from what we've seen of them with this team, like, they've been perfect fits.
He could make his return or his Thunder debut, maybe against one of those games in the Californian road trip.
No, yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't have any insider info on me, obviously. But, I mean, when you look at the timeline that the Thunder gave in terms of real evaluation and you look at their schedule, I really think that 4-day break is going to do them a lot of good in terms of, like, bringing Hartenstein back to the fold. And like you said, I really think, if I had to guess, I'm assuming we'll be back by that road trip, like you mentioned. And once he does come back, I think he'll be able to kind of stabilize, the starting lineup a little bit. And, they'll be able to get back to playing, how they were playing before Chet got hurt. and they've been having to play this small ball era of basketball. But like I said, like once Hartenstein comes back, obviously there's no 1-for-1 replacement for Chet, but he should be able to kind of stabilize some things.
Yeah.
Yeah, OKC is forced to play an exhausting small ball actually, but yeah, like you said, the return of Hartenstein probably on the road trip, if he's here on the road trip, he will play. The return of Hartenstein will stabilize that and allow players to make a more human defense because actually they are really good, but JW in 5 I don't think it will be at this level during all the season.
No, yeah, like he even said after the game yesterday that he needs like a lot of ice baths playing the 5s, and he's kind of had some pretty bad luck in terms of like guys he has to match up. I mean, he had to go against Zubac and then Nurkic as well. I mean, it's been tough for him for sure. But like I said, this is definitely a temporary thing, and once Hardenstein gets back, J-Dub should be able to go back playing his natural 3-4 position.
Yeah, and you were talking about Caruso, who was also guarding Zubac. And before Hartenstein will be able to play, J-Dub will have to guard Wemby, which is another heavy matchup and a strong matchup. And yeah, you can see that even though he has amazing activity in both sides of the court, I mean, you gotta be a little bit tired at the end of the game if you're J-Dub.
No, yeah, for sure. Like you don't want to run into a situation where you kind of run him into the ground because you're playing him against all these larger centers. So, like I said, he's done an admirable job so far in this week of games. But for the long term health of both himself and his team, you'd rather have him be a 3/4.
Yeah. Since we're talking about the field and we're talking about J-Dub at the 5 spot, I wanted to talk, and we have to talk about this incredible defense. OKC is by far the best defense in the NBA with more than 4 points ahead of the second place at defensive rating. A little bit ahead, but the opponent comes in at 3 points. We've seen that in the Suns game, for example. But we're heading for an historic year defensively for OKC. They're the best defense at the rim, the best mid-range defense. They have the most blocks, the most steals. I mean, what a start to the season. Last year, we were amazed by what the Wolves were doing, but the start of the season of the Thunder is basically what the Wolves were doing, but even better. And it was done with 10 games, 9 games and a half from Chet, but when you see the Chet injury, we were like, well, maybe the defense will be not that good. And you see it was difficult. The game against the Clippers was a little bit difficult for this defense because basically the Clippers were make every shot in the perimeter that they were taking. But you see the games against the Pels and the games against the Suns, and you're like, yeah, this defense will fall down badly even with the Chet injury.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a little bit of a bummer because with Chet, it kind of felt like they were on their way to having a historical defense. Because, like you mentioned, like he was off to the best start of his career on both ends of the floor. It definitely felt like the offense caught up with him defensively as well in terms of his scoring and creating his own shot. And that kind of sucks some of the air out of the balloon with this defense. But I still think, instead of being a historical defense, I still think this can be just an average, league best defense, which is still like a really solid thing for sure. And like you mentioned, like they've done a really good job of just kind of, I guess, changing their identity on that end of the floor where, they might be giving up more easy looks around the basket, but they've been a lot more active on the passing lanes, disrupting passes and creating turnovers. And, I think they lost the rebounding battle in every game outside of the Suns game this year. And, that hasn't really mattered just because of the fact that OKC is like creating so many turnovers and creating so many fast break opportunities and just stealing the ball at a historic clip. And I mean, we'll see. Like, I think, once Hartenstein comes back, they'll be able to kind of, go back to like playing a more traditional base of defense. But for the time being, they did a really good job of just kind of, playing on the fly and having J-Dub be a 5. And, J-Dub's done a really good job of just kind of protecting the rim as well. I mean, we've seen some pretty crazy blocks on his part as well in the stretch as well. But I mean, Yeah, it just sucks, that you won't be able to see this defense at its full potential with Chet gone, and not only that, but like the Chet Hardenstein duo. I mean, they basically won't play at all this year, which kind of sucks because you got like a little bit of a 2-year window with these two guys.
Yeah.
But once this season, what ultimately matters with the season is the playoffs, and he should be back by then. And that should definitely, keep fans, I guess, optimistic about this year. Because, like I said, what ultimately matters this year is like how they do in the playoffs. Because we already know this team can be a 55+ type win team in the regular season.
Yeah. I think that since you're talking about, I wanted to ask you a question about the Chet injury. The reaction of this team, especially after the loss against the Warriors and the Chet injury. We saw some players impacted in their feelings by the injury. Even the press conference after the Warriors game was, I think, pretty sad. It was one of the first time what you could see that the players were, like I said, they were impacted in their feelings about this Chet injury. And I think that the Clippers games in back-to-back, second night of a back-to-back was the perfect game because you had an amazing win in an amazing game. And I think that helped the team to bounce back, to say, okay, we had, like Sam Presti said, the sky is falling down multiple times in a season for a team. We felt like the Chet injury was one of that. And to be able to have a bounce back game the next night and with the shakery high, I think that helped a little bit this team to move on to the next game and to say, okay, we will not have Chet for 8 to 10 weeks, but it's okay. We're a good team and we can win games even though we don't have him. So what's your opinion on the reaction of this group to this injury, and maybe on the rest what will be the way for the Thunder, what the Thunder team will look like for the rest of the season until Chet returns from its injury, and we know it will not be, I would say, until the All-Star break, because I don't think that he will be able to play in 8 weeks because it's return to basketball activities, not reevaluated like it was for Hartenstein. So what's your feeling for what this season for the Thunder will look like for the next 8 to 10 weeks without Chet?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, with Chet, I think this team would have easily cruised to 60+ wins this year and run away with the first seed. And now that we lost him for multiple months, I mean, I still think the Thunder could still get the first seed, but I think the margin for error definitely decreases, and it's going to be a lot more of a tighter race. And ultimately, like I said, like I don't really think seeding really matters a whole ton this year. I don't really think the regular season really matters a whole ton for OKC because we already know that they could be a dominant regular season team. And what ultimately matters this year is how to do in the playoffs. And you should have Chet and J-Dub back by then. And those two, like how far OKC goes in the playoffs is going to come down to those two guys. And we'll see how that plays out. But like in terms of the regular season, I still think they'll be a top 4 seed this year. And I mean, like I said, the season doesn't really matter. I mean, we kind of saw the Mavs go in the finals last year as the 5th seed. And it's all about getting hot at the right time. And as long as the Thunder stay, within, as long as the Thunder have like home court advantage in the first round, which I think they should be able to do, then I think they'll be solid to go into the playoffs. But in terms of like the rest of the year, like I said, once Hardenstein comes back, that should like stabilize some things as well at the starting center spot. And he's proven to be a capable starter for a 50+ win team with the Knicks last year. So you just gotta survive until then. And the good news with Hardenstein is that his hand fracture are pretty easy. Hand fractures are typically pretty easy to return by. Like you don't really need I guess a little bit of a ramp up period or knocking off any rust because of it. Like he's been able to like physically do a lot of the same things that he was previously doing with the fractured hand. So just because of the nature of that injury, I think Hardenstein should be able to kind of get off to like 100% effort to start whenever he does come back. But yeah, like I said, like in terms of like the mood around the team after Chet got injured, like it was very somber for sure. I mean, you could tell like it really affected these guys, and but like I said, like, they did a good job of just kind of bouncing back and just kind of adjusting to life without Chet. And I mean, they're off to a 3-0 start, and I mean they've looked really good so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't have the time to think about the Chet's injury. There was a game the next day, so they need to be focused on this game. And you see with this small ball the implications of all the players. When you see a ball on the rim to Zubats, for example, on Nurkic the last game, when you see 4 players grouping on Nurkic to let him to not let him have time to decide, etc. And you see some players, and that's where you see the group is doing well. There's a good chemistry. When you see guys like Isaiah Joe who are going in front of guys arriving on him, and it was very dynamic. For example, you see Aaron Wiggins, some guys like that who are doing great stuff. As you say, the return of Hartenstein will be a good news, because it's not possible to have this rhythm all the season. But yeah, there was a good reaction on Chet's injury, and yeah, the fact that they had a game the day after the Chet injury was probably a good thing. Good thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, usually you kind of dread back-to-backs, but I mean, I think in this case, they definitely, we're kind of excited to kind of, move on, like you said, and to pick up a really good win against the Clippers team that I feel like they've been pretty good this year, and, to kind of, get that win and just try to move on and adjust to playing without Chet. Like that definitely, I think that definitely helped out a lot for sure with them. And, they, like I said, since then they've looked really good, kind of playing the small ball version that they've been forced to play with the amount of guys out.
Yeah, and I think that the Clippers game, like we said before, I think the atmosphere at the Paycon Center in this Clippers game was off the charts. It's my favorite game of the year so far because the game was amazing, a real offensive masterpiece from both teams, and yeah, to be able to win in the first game without Chet, and you could see that the Paycom Center was really behind this team, and they were really that extra bit of motivation that will come from the fans helped the team a little bit to win this game.
No, yeah, I mean the fans have been pretty good this year so far, and it is kind of funny that every time Jada does anything positive, they start barking. So it's been kind of funny to see that kind of become like a chant for them. But yeah, I mean, like I said, like just for morale base for both the team and the fans, like they definitely needed that Clippers win to just kind of start moving on from what happened and just kind of adjust to life without Chet for the next couple months.
Yeah, J-Dub is a little bit the Russ from this era, with considering the relationship with the audience and with the fans. I would say Shea is more of a quiet guy, like a KD guy. I would say not the most who has the most explicit reactions on the court, but J-Dub is really just this guy so full of energy. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about him because he started the season, I would not say badly, but not as strong as he was last year on offense. And we've seen he was a little bit clumsy, but he's evolving at an all-star level since a few games. We've seen the activity offensively, defensively, and he has all those tools to be able to be an all-defensive guy, but also the second option of a very good team. So I have to ask you a question. Can we believe in All-Star J-Dub? Will he be an All-Star in San Francisco next year, February? Is he capable of doing that? That's the question I wanted to ask, because with the Chet injury, Chet seems like he was like the clear favorite for the deploy, but also nearly a lock for All-Star, and maybe J-Dub with the Chet injury can take that spot of second option and really just a great defensive player.
Like I said, I mean, if the Thunder are still in the first seed or second seed in February, that obviously means that J-Dub's really taking the next step. And like I said, he's done a really good job since Chet went down. And I really think, if the Thunder are going to stay in that range, then they're going to need, him and Shea to average 50+ points together for the rest of the way. And if that's the case, that means, J-Dub's numbers obviously really boost up. And, he had a little bit of a slow start to start the season, but he's done a really good job recently ramping it up. I mean, he scored a season high 31 points the other night against the Pelicans. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, you kind of feel like the Thunder kind of deserve a second All-Star at that point, and it probably would have been Chet, but now that he's gone, now that he's out, it's got to be J-Dub.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the playmaking took a leap this season too. I really like the playmaking from J-Dub this year.
No, yeah, and like defensively, he's done a really good job just kind of anchoring OKC's defense since then, and I don't see why they can't continue even when Hardenstein eventually comes back.
Yeah.
Do you think if there's an all defensive player in OKC, it will not be Chet because of his injury, but do you think it's J-Dub probably this year or another guy? If you can put only one player of the OKC Thunder on the all defensive team?
I'll probably go with Lou Dort just because it kind of felt like he's kind of due. I mean, the last couple of years, he probably should have made it, but now that the Thunder are kind of on a national stage and, they're playing on national TV a lot more often, you get to see kind of Lou Dort match up against some of these guys defensively, and he definitely has that reputation. And, he's been another guy who's like really stepped up this whole season, really. And you've definitely noticed that recently. I mean, he did a really good job of just kind of limiting James Harden, Brandon Ingram, Devin Booker, like, if I feel like if anybody does, I mean, it would have been Chet for sure, but if anybody else does make the all-defensive team, I think, Lou Dort definitely kind of deserves it for sure.
Yeah, and we've seen that the Wolves have had two all-defensive players last year with, of course, Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels. We will see if Caruso is able to play 65 games of 20 minutes to be eligible for all-defensive player, but you could have maybe if the Thunder maintain this historic defense, you can have maybe 3 all defensive players because the all defensive are positionless. So you could have Caruso, Dort, and maybe Jalen Williams, like you said. After time, I don't think after time we'll be able to be eligible because again the 65 game rules, but he was close last year with the Knicks. He's a very good defensive player. And like I said, the Thunder is an historic defense relative to how other teams defend. Because, if you look at the raw defensive rating compared to the early 2000 years, you say, no, they're not a defensive team like were the Pistons of 2004. But if you look at the league average defensive rating and how OKC is far from the league defensive rating average, you're saying, we're witnessing a really historic defensive team.
No, yeah, for sure. And, Chet's injury kind of take some of the excitement out of that. But, I mean, at the end of the day, like, if you have the league's best defense by far, then you definitely deserve at least one guy on one of the all-defensive teams.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked yet about Case and Wallace. So there's a lot of very good players defensively on this team.
No, yeah, and they come to you in swarms as well. I mean, you kind of saw Devin Booker get blitzed a lot before he even gets to the half court, and that kind of took him out the whole game. And I mean, it's just tough to really match up against his team as as a top scorer.
Yeah. Let's talk about Shea, of course. He, like I said for J-Dub, he didn't start the season badly, but there was this whole thing about the pull-up threes that didn't fall into it, but he slowly returned into the game that allowed him to be All-NBA first team 2 years in a row. Was this increase in number of pull-up threes something that Mark Daigneault wanted? And do you think that the experiment is now over? Because we've seen the games against the Suns, Shea is attempting like 6 or 7 threes, but it's step-back threes like we have seen him do the last couple of years. It's not straight pull-up threes in transition like he was doing at the beginning of the season.
No, I mean, I think this is all Shea motivated. I mean, Mark kind of said it the other day that he doesn't really coach Shea as much as you would think. And if anybody's going to drive his development, it's going to be him. And, the results kind of speak for themselves in terms of that, where, he kind of went from this late lottery pick into a top 5 player in the league. But I mean, he started off the year, experimenting with the outside shot. The results weren't really there. And now you've kind of seen over the last week or so him kind of return to, what led to him being one of the best players in the league the last couple of years, where, he's taking a lot of mid-range shots, driving to the basket a lot, drawing contact. But we do have I ultimately do think he wants to bring back the 3-point shot, and we do have like a season-long sample from I think the 21 season, the 21-22 season, where I think he averaged like 5 threes on 35% shooting or something like that, and so we definitely have like a large enough sample from before where Shea can be a quality outside shooter, and maybe he's trying to like get back to that. I guess volume and efficiency, and I think he's done a good job of that recently for sure. Like his 3-point shot has looked a lot better recently, and like I said, I think it was going to be resorts like him coming back and him using the step back three, because that was kind of a weapon of his a couple of years ago. Kind of went away with it, just and eliminated the outside shot. But I mean, we've seen him kind of hit some step back threes in these last couple of games, especially down the stretch. So I don't think he'll necessarily suddenly become like a 5+, 7+ 3-point attempts per game type of guy. But I mean, that's just another thing where I think he'll be able to like average 3+ attempts per game and shoot at a decent percentage, and that'll just unlock a new, I guess, level to his game as a scorer to whatever he already was.
Yeah, he will continue to drive to the rim and not become not attempting 11 threes a game like Anthony Edwards is doing right now in Minnesota, or like what De'Aaron Fox has done with the Kings last year too. I think he knows that his best offensive game is the mid-range game and to be able to draw fouls, even though he didn't. The referee are a little bit inconsistent with the Shea officiating. Sometimes it's pretty good, like it was during the Clippers game, and sometimes you're like, what? He didn't have 2 free throws on display, especially the last 2 games against the Suns and against the Pels. But yeah, I think that ultimately his best game is the mid-range game, and like you said, 3 points is important, but it has to be like it was the previous year, step backs and not straight pull-up threes that were a little bit of freedom. I would say it's not what I think he forced them a little bit because it was a goal for him at the start of the season, but I didn't think that ultimately it was a good thing for the Thunder. It seems like, yeah, like I said, a little bit of freedom in the mood of the Thunder offense.
Yeah, and it definitely does feel like, he was able to kind of experiment with the 3-point shot. He had that luxury just because of the fact that they were blowing teams out all the time, and Chet was kind of there. And, now that he's gone, you kind of don't have that same room for error. And now, I don't know how much has to do with the fact that Chet's out, but, now that he's gone and, you're relying a little bit more on Shea to like be, the best player in the court. Maybe he's kind of, realized like, all right, let me just go back to like my bread and butter and average 30+ on good efficiency.
Yeah, and do you think Shea has the like some players like 2 years ago, Joel Embiid said that it was important for him to have the MVP award. Do you think Shea needs to have the MVP award, or it's not a big thing for him? A big thing for him, and he's only focused on the winning team, and the MVP will come if it comes, but it's not an important thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he cares about it to a certain extent. I mean, it's only human nature to want to be recognized for the individual work you've done as a player. But I think he understands that, if you keep winning at the rate OKC's done the last couple of years, eventually you're going to be, rewarded for it by the league. So I don't really think he's pressing on it too much and prioritizing that over, collecting wins or whatever. But I mean, like I said, I'm sure there's like a human element involved where he obviously would want to get that award. I mean, it's the most important basketball award in the sports. So, and he's finished top 5 in voting the last couple of years. So, he's like on the cusp of it, and obviously, that would be something that would be like super special to win for him as an individual. But I mean, like I said, I don't really get the sense that he's like prioritizing that or playoff success or wins.
Yeah, I would also not care to a certain extent about the MVP when you have players like Nikola Jokic was in a triple-double machine with crazy efficiency. I mean, yeah, let's focus on winning a championship, because when you have this type of alien in Denver, you're like, I can't compete with him on the long season, regular season length, because it's just too good. Statistically, it's too good. Efficiency-wise, it's too good. So yeah, let's focus on winning a championship. It would be easier than to win a championship in OKC rather than beat Nikola Jokic for the MVP.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm sure Shea had it his way. He'd prefer the title over the award as well.
Yeah, like us, I would say, like us. And when you know that the last MVP to have won the championship was Steph in like 2015, you're like, do not win the MVP. It's not important. Let's focus on winning a championship.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, I'm sure it'd be cool for him to win it. And like I said, if they win enough games, like the awards will eventually come. But like I said, he's not gonna like sabotage a game just to like average 30 plus or whatever.
Yeah. Finally, last question. I saw that you wrote an article about the rumor Giannis at OKC was a big thing the previous days. We're hearing a lot of talk about it right now because of the poor results from the Bucks. I know you're not particularly excited about the idea, but beyond Giannis, do you think OKC could do maybe all in on a player within the next 2 or 3 years? We're hearing a lot about the draft capital, all those first round that keeps going, that keeps getting better because we're seeing the results from the Sixers, and the Thunder have top 6 protected first round pick from the Sixers this year. Of course, the Clippers swap and the concern about the Kawhi injury and the Kawhi health. So do you think that OKC and Sapristi will say, okay, maybe let's say in 2 years the Thunder still haven't won a championship, and is saying Sapristi saying, okay, maybe we trade, I don't know, Chet or Jada for a top 15, top 10 NBA player. Do you think that it's possible? It's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, you never want to say never in the NBA for sure, but I mean, just kind of historically looking at how the Thunder have operated since they moved here with Presti, like that's not really in their DNA. Like the only time you can really point back to them kind of making those, I guess, superstar type of deals were the PG and Carmelo trades, and that was out of just pure necessity, just because of the roster you had around Russ. Nobody really stood out at that point. But I think if the Thunder had it their way, they're gonna have this 5+ year window with Shea, Chet, and J-Dub. You're gonna have multiple chances to win a title with those guys, and the rest of the roster around them you can kind of tweak and adjust to whatever best fits them. And like you mentioned, the draft capital, like obviously they could obviously use that to like trade for someone like Giannis, like you said. But I think they would prefer to kind of use it to draft cheap young role players who would be cap friendly, because eventually you're going to have those 3 guys on these massive extensions. All 3 are going to be eligible for extensions this upcoming offseason. So eventually those 3 are going to like make up most of your team payroll for the foreseeable future. So that means the rest of the roster has to be on super cheap deals and on rookie deals, and with the amount of draft picks OKC has, and especially the ones that they have from other teams, like they should be able to draft cheap lottery type talent to like really keep them one of the deepest teams in the leagues. And obviously they could also they also have the luxury to kind of overpay for role players as well, and I think that they're more likely to do that than like go big star hunting in the off season. And we're kind of already seen that a little bit last deadline where they traded for Gordon Hayward as a role player, and obviously that didn't work out, but the thought process behind it definitely made sense. And I really think those are going to be the type of moves that the Thunder make from here on out with this group. But like I said, you can never say never to anything. But if I had to guess right now, I think they're going to try to win with these 3 guys that they've kind of grown together, and just kind of tweak the rest of the roster around them.
Yeah, maybe like Denver is doing right now, not with that much success that they had in the past, I would say, because they really didn't have a replacement for the loss of KCP and especially Bruce Brown, I would say, because Christian Brown is doing a very good job replacing KCP. He's not the same type of player, but I think he's doing a good job. But really, the loss of Bruce Brown was never replaced. So yeah, I think there are 2 paths, I would say. If you want to have a long championship window, you can have the Celtics way, I would say, when you have all those players, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, who were on rookie deal, and they were very good on their rookie deals, and you have this kind of financial cap space, and you can say, okay, we have our 2 guys in rookie deals, so we can have players that we can overpay in terms of salary, like they've done with Al Horford or other players. And you have the then way where you're saying, okay, we have maybe 3 max players with Chet, J-Dub, and Shea. And what we wanted to build is around those 3 max players, a sort of rotation of young players with the draft capital that you have, of course, during all those years and for the upcoming years.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that's the route they've taken. Because like you mentioned, like they had like a ton of cap space to use this off season, and they ended up using it on Hardenstein. And I don't think it's a coincidence that he was signed to a 2+1 deal where you know the last year's a team option, and that kind of coincides with the upcoming Chet and J-Dub extensions that should be starting. So it definitely feels like, you know, they kind of already kind of showed their hand a little bit. It's like how they're gonna like philosophically, you know, build this contender, and you know, unless like, you know, they suddenly change their mind because, you know, whoever's going to be available. But it does feel like, you know, it's going to be Shea, Chet, and J-Dub for the next 5+ years as the kind of group you can build around.
Yeah.
And I have a dilemma for you. If you needed to choose between J-Dub and Chet for the max extension, who do you choose?
I mean,
the choice is the choice possible?
I mean, that's tough because, I mean, like how much do you take into account the Chet's kind of, you know, missed 2 for his first 3 years to freak injuries, and I think both of them are going to get extended for sure. But it's really tough. Like, I mean, I think I would go Chet just because what he does is super special and one of one, and you know, obviously, you know, before he kind of, you know, had his hip fracture, he was like really coming into his own. He was playing like a top 10 guy in the league. So I think I would give the edge towards Chet, but I mean, it's really a coin flip between those 2.
Kind of simple ways to put the max on both, and no, and don't worry about that. We'll put all the money on it.
Yeah, the goodness is that, you know, they don't have to pick or choose; they can have both.
Yeah, there's also this rule of if you're all NBA, deploy, or MVP, you can earn 30% of the cap space instead of 25. I think that the designated rookie extension, the extension that great players have, like Cunningham, like some type of player. I think both players will be on max deal. Maybe the question is, if you have to give the designated rookie extension, who will it be? And I think that maybe J-Dub will be this guy, especially since the Chet injury. And we've seen that with Memphis and Jaren Jackson Jr. The year that Jaren Jackson Jr. was extended, he only played 9 games, and he was assigned to a cheap extension, which is still the contract he has to this day. So I don't think it will be the case with Chet, but yeah, like you said, you have to ask the question, like, do you really want to put a max deal on a player who has missed 50% of his games during his first 3 seasons in the association? I don't know. I think that ultimately the Thunder will do it, but yeah, if you want to have a long title window, you also have to maximize the financial stuff, especially with the second apron stuff, who's really like a bad guy in a movie in the background saying, "I'm there. Don't forget about me." So yeah, I think that next summer would be really expensive for the Thunder because you have Chet and J-Dub extension. You will have probably Shea Supermax extension, which will be the largest NBA contract in NBA history. So yeah, I think next summer will be a decisive summer for the Thunder, and maybe that the results in the playoffs will also play a part of what you're choosing to do during this offseason.
Yeah, it's gonna be super expensive for sure. But I mean, like you said, like I mean, at the end of the day, like these are good problems to have.
Yeah. It's not like, oh, Darius Bazley is a restricted free agent. Can we give him like 12 a year? Yeah.
No, yeah. These are rich people's problems for sure. Like any other fan base would take these problems.
Yeah. I agree with that. So that's it. That's all of my questions. Thank you very much, Clemente, for this interview. I hope that you liked it. We had some data problems. I will not lie. We had some problems with the internet, but that's okay. We managed to the end, so that's good. But very, very thank you to you.
No, really, thank you for the invite. I really enjoyed, getting on here talking about the Thunder. And if you guys ever, want me on here again, definitely don't hesitate but to reach out for sure. But yeah, I mean, I had a fun time for sure.
Yeah, we will do it when maybe around the playoff time when we're saying, okay, so the finals against the Celtics, who's the real favorite? No, I'm just I'm I'm just joking because I'm a little bit pessimistic. I'm known for being a pessimistic fan with the Thunder, so it's only a joke. But yeah, huge thank you to you, Clemente. I will switch now into French for the outro. Donc, merci beaucoup à ceux qui sont allés jusqu'au bout de cet épisode. On espère que ça vous aura plu. C'était un format un petit peu spécial. Donc, voilà, on a eu quelques problèmes de connexion, comme j'ai dit. On a fait du mieux qu'on a pu. Merci à toi, Tom, d'avoir été là aussi. Et puis, voilà, on se retrouve très vite pour le live notation au bout de 20 matchs. Et puis, d'ici là, portez-vous bien. Regardez du Thunder. Salut!
Salut!